You sure? Okay. So is there anything you guys want to talk about today before we, go home and, hello?
Well, I would like to talk about siblings.
Okay. Well, you're not Okay, well, that's one topic. Is there any other topics out there that could top that? If you guys Brandon, I went to Farmer Joe's yesterday, and I passed the coffee aisle, and there was this motherload coffee, and I said, I wonder what Brandon is, how he is, where he is. Did you finish Berkeley?
Yeah.
You're done?
Yeah. I've been working there. Tutor over there.
Philosophy?
Yeah.
Good for you. And now?
20 years or so.
Masters?
I'm at cards right now.
Why? Forgive me, I know this is... Yeah, go ahead.
It's, expensive.
So what? I mean, you're young, you can pay it off, you have another 80 years to go. Can you just go to San Francisco? If you don't want to go to Princeton, like Chris and other people, just enroll in the master's program. It'll take a year and a half. Get your humanities degree. And then you can start teaching as well as doing music.
Yeah.
Just do it. You'll be done in no time. Just do it. Really, just do it. Okay.
Didn't work out last time. I was gonna apply for this.
Well, you haven't met Abi. She'll probably be here. She has her master's in some tech stuff. And so she went back to San Francisco. In a year and a half, she was done, or maybe a year. Is that her? Hello. So yeah, you can do it in a year. And I'll give you my dissertation, just copy and paste. I mean, you guys didn't hear that. But, yeah. Huh? Nothing. Emptiness. Oh yeah, it's from the dinosaur age. It's good to see you. So, any other topics besides siblings? I mean, it's a great topic. Just I need to. Megan? Of course. Yes. Yeah.
I guess kind of just creating bonds with people, because there's been a lot of talk about just like parental bonds, familial bonds, bonds made through love. What about just in general, just creating a connection with someone? Because I've had someone who pulled me out of the deep that doesn't really have those other ties. It was just a bond that was created purely just from interaction, stranger to stranger, that just built up over time.
Okay. Bonds, siblings, Casera. I see. Olivia?
Do you like other players besides
Messi is good.
you have a Luka Modric? Who's my favorite?
Who?
Luka?
Luca? Isn't that from the movie, Luca?
He's like inspiration from Pop.
Huh. He plays for what team? Luca. Oh wait, it's the long hair guy, kind of like Matt, but prettier. Okay. I mean, you're pretty, but he's just. Is it Modric or Modric? Yeah. I don't like him. No, he doesn't look good. He doesn't. I mean, once. So what? It's like saying, well, Kim Kardashian on the cover of Time, so that makes her pretty. Is it?
the story isn't really inspiring.
Yeah, well, no. You know, there are two things that I think people need. You have someone who plays great piano, but there is no passion, and it's like a gift. They have great skills. They play really fast. They everything is harmonious, but you listen to them and it doesn't make you feel anything. My nephew Sarush, he plays the piano, and he's really good. But every time I hear that, I want to kill myself. You know, he's got like zero passion for the instrument. Maybe he'll have one when life breaks him, I don't know, but right now it's just not there. He has the skills, but there is no passion. Some people have a lot of passion, and the problem with passion is that it generates a good amount of feelings and emotions. And when you get a teacher and the teacher brings you in and says, okay, you need to learn these things, you say, well, I just want to fly. I don't want to like come down here and read the notes. And you realize you have a lot of passion, but because the passion is not developed through skills, reading the notes, maybe getting to know Chopin a little bit, or maybe, I don't know, Eminem and those people, you kind of get stuck after a while, and then you bore yourself. A lot of passion, a lot of feelings, but because you don't have the skills, you just get stuck. Then, once in a while, life just generates these people. Not only do they have the passion, but they also have the skills. Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Cristiano Ronaldo. He has looks, he has passion, he has skills. I mean, and he's like Costco. I mean, I understand Luca is like a tiny little 7-Eleven. Not bad. He'll satisfy some people. Messi is also quite good. He's like a mini Costco. But Ronaldo, I don't know. I mean, it's amazing. And when he takes off his shirt and the way he's tanned, and Giorgiano, his girlfriend, it just adds more to him. And she's really hot. I mean, some people are cold, some people are lukewarm, some people are warm, some people are hot, and some people are just boiling. She's like boiling. Well, this is not really a philosophy class. Let's move on. So, what else? Oh, Kendra, anything? I know you just got in. Well, hold on. Terry, yes. Aaron?
What would you say to someone that has no passion but is like mild of interest?
Mild interest is good. It gives you some purpose, some direction. It distracts you from feeling hopeless and depressed. I mean, you don't have to be really interested in the class. Just a tiny bit is okay. An ounce. And that's a driving force. You get up early morning, you take a shower, maybe, change your underwear and your clothes, and you come to class. And you meet some people. Maybe someone will say, hey, you want to have coffee afterwards? And all of a sudden you realize you came to school about 8:45 and you're going home around like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. It's been a relatively good day. One of the, I think, unfortunate things that happened in our history was that you had people like Anthony Robbins. You know who he is? He's a prick. He wrote this book like Awaken the Giant Within. I doubt very much he was talking about the private parts. You know, and when you live in a how-to culture, the assumption is that everybody has a gift inside them with some encouragement, with some push. They'll be profoundly creative, and that's one of the flaws of Karl Marx. You know, that there is something profoundly noble about being a human being, that in the right environment, something about you will blossom and you'll become a genius. You know, and that's one of the awful things about religion, I think, that it tells that the kingdom of God lives inside you and you should do what you can to bring it out. And one of the nice things about World Wars I and II, it demonstrated that despite all of our gung-ho statements about compassion and generosity and forgiveness and being highly intellectual and being able to examine life, the truth is what these two world wars demonstrated is that human beings are irrational animals. You know, the lions don't go around just aimlessly hunting and killing and leaving, you know, what they've killed out. They basically sit when they're hungry. After a few weeks, they hunt a deer, they eat what they can, and they go away. Human beings don't do that. And one of the things that happened after World War II is that we came to realize that human beings are really, really vicious for the most part. It takes one or two people, maybe on the planet. If you're lucky, you live at say the 1960s in New York, amongst various Jewish communities. All these intellectuals come up. You know, but for the most part, human beings we're just consumers. That's what we are. You know, you consume Karl Marx the way you consume food, and then you take what you think is needed for you, and then you shit the rest out. That's what we do. And just because you've read a couple of books about Karl Marx, it doesn't make you a Marxist or a communist or enlightened. It just means you have a few bumper stickers inside you. So with the coming of people like Anthony Robbins, Eckhart Tolle, Jordan Peterson, and the rest of these people, they give the rest of us this illusion that if you like sit and meditate, if you breathe in and breathe out, if you chant Coca-Cola 50,000 times a day, you know, something about you will jump out and you'll see Jesus Christ. And that's why Oakland is known for people to get high. Why? Because the assumption is this other part of you will come out, and you'll see it, and you'll experience it, and inspire you. That's not true. Most of us are consumers. You'll find only a few people who really have the talent to create something decent and noble. That cloud music she went to. A rare human being at the age of 30. Becomes this inspiring rapper. So, the point I'm trying to make, as long as you have some interest in something, that's fine. You just make sure your interests are in something healthy. And I'm not sure what that is. Maybe pornography. So yeah, there is nothing wrong with walking around knowing that your life amounts to nothing, you know, like any other animal. You wake up, you eat, you shit, you come to class, you have a job, you make some money, you get married for the stupidest of reasons, you have children for even more stupid reasons, and then you die. Nothing wrong with that. That used to be our life for thousands of years. Only now, you know, in the land of privilege and the so-called enlightened, everybody is discontent and unhappy because they want to be their true, authentic selves. How stupid can that be? Terry? Again?
How do you deal with like?
By the way, I apologize. Yes.
How do you deal with like being heavily nihilistic?
Can I tell you a story? Are you sure? But let me first put you in the scenario, and then I'll tell you a story about one of my favorite stories. Have you ever had Zachary's Pizza? Really? When? And you didn't bring me a slice?
It's open.
You know what? I'm not going to pass you. I'm just kidding. So consider for a moment, going back to Aaron's question about interest. Whether a piece of your memory opens up and it advertises Zachary's Pizza to you, whether you have a friend who says Zachary's and that's another piece of advertisement, whether you come to class and I say Zachary's Pizza, whether you're having a chat with your sister, whether you drive by ground and you see Domino's and that reminds you of Zachary's Pizza, all these advertisements kind of create a sort of interest in you, okay? And you look at your pocket, you have zero money, but you have a credit card, usually paid off by your father. And so you say, well, why don't I go to Zachary's Pizza? And through the creative arts, what we call imagination and fantasy, which all live in the future, you kind of picture yourself sitting at the Zachary's place, say on College, with Caesar salad. Do you drink beer? Good job, you don't. Now, you just drink water. Milk? Water. Good job, water. And so you wait for this pizza to come your way. And you kind of look to the table to the left, table to the right, just to see what they've ordered. And your mouth begins to water, and you can't wait for this pizza to come your way. You have meaning, you have purpose. You're not depressed, you have an agenda, which is really, really good. And you find your desire for pizza so relevant and meaningful that patience automatically is generated inside you. You wait and you wait and you wait, and the waitress comes to you and says, another 5 minutes. You say, oh yeah, that's fine. And you wait. And eventually the pizza comes your way. You have the first slice, it's great. The second slice is also great. The third slice, you're beginning to doubt if you should eat anymore. And then the fourth slice, you say, man, I knew I should have stopped at the second slice. And then you loosen your belt a little bit, and I feel a little sick. And you tell the waitress to kindly box the pizza, and she does. And on your way out, you see a homeless person, and you feel bad for you single-handedly having eaten 3/4 of the pizza. So you give him the box. And then you go home and your mom says, son, would you like to go to Zachary's Pizza? And you say, Mom, the next time you say Zachary's, I'm just going to shit my pants. Nihilism. Something that used to give you so much meaning, so much purpose, because you were exposed to it a bit too much. It lost its meaning. It's kind of like relationships. Nihilism can happen in two ways. Sometimes the moment you're born, the moment you come out of your mom, you're wired to be negative, you're wired to be dark, you're wired to be gloomy. No different than Vincent van Gogh, for example. No different than Khalil Gibran. No different than Jesus Christ. I mean, this guy has zero experience in life. At the age of 12, he says, you know what, I don't find anything meaningful. He leaves. His form of nihilism is very different than Moses. Moses begins to understand. So you have a kind of nihilism that is the outcome of life experiences and your ability to process them really, really well. And the other is just temperamental. You don't want to follow anyone, and you don't want to listen to anyone. You don't want to read books by anyone who has written about the darkness and gloominess of life because of their temperaments. That's no good. Consider the following. May I? So remember, when your mom tells you, let's go have Zachary's, you say no. And there's a good reason you say no. You don't want Zachary's. You hate Zachary's. And you don't even want to think about pizza. Why? You just had it. There is a book, it's really, really good to read, maybe 50, 60 times, if you have the time and the patience for it. It's a book that was written by this guy named Hermann Hesse. It was a very difficult time for him. His wife was a little crazy. He had 3 kids, but he couldn't really find love or bond with them. The book is called Siddhartha. One of the nice things about the book is that there's a guy who has everything in life. And there comes a point where something about him says it's not enough. But when he says, my ordinary life is not enough, there is something else that he's looking for. He's looking for Atman. He's looking for a self. He's looking for God. He's looking for enlightenment. Okay? And so he goes on this quest with one of his best friends, whose name is Govinda. You know, they both want to become monks. They both want to live in the forest. And they run into the Buddha. But Siddhartha is a very strange fellow in the sense that he's lost hope in words. He's lost hope in teachings. He doesn't want to read anymore. He doesn't want to go to workshops anymore because he knows that what he's looking for has to come from his inside. It's like someone says, where can I go and find love? Well, someone like Anthony Robbins or some loser will tell you, well, if you go to this place, that bar over there, or church over there, you'll look at someone, you fall in love with them. A more difficult path is, listen, you can't truly love anyone unless you've got some self-knowledge. You come to understand certain things about yourself. The dark parts, the good parts, the bad parts, the parts that are Hitler inside you, the parts that are Jesus Christ inside you. You just need to get to know them. And so when the Buddha says, come follow me, Siddhartha says, no, your wisdom may be good for you, but it can't be good for me. I seek wisdom that comes from within. And the Buddha looks at him and says, you're a very cunning young man. Okay, fine. Go your way. Do what you need to do. He comes to a point where he grows really, really exhausted because he keeps sitting and meditating and fasting and praying, but no doors open. It's like heaven remains shut for him. And he gives up. And he runs into a woman whose name is Kamala. And Kama in Sanskrit means someone who gives you pleasure. Okay? But this is not like an American kind of pleasure when you go to a brothel and you have sex with someone. This is a woman who is gifted and has the skills through her lips, through her touch, through the way you touch her or allows you to touch her. She gets you very, very close to this thing called beauty, to this thing called love. But one of the things this woman tells her is that you will never be able to love me. You have lost that ability. You just don't know how to love. You live in a very detached way. And you could say that he's a tiny little man who's experienced trauma. But not trauma because his father did A, B, C, D, not trauma because his grandfather did E, F, G, H, not trauma because his wife left him. No, none of those things. Trauma because he looked at life. He came to realize he's just unhappy. That's a traumatic experience. It's like you look at your companion and you don't feel anything. And you want to feel something, but it just doesn't come about. And you try to fake it with a cruise, with a this, with a that, but something about you says, there was passion, but there is none left. Okay. Him and Kamala have sex, and he finds himself in the presence of God every time they do. He makes money, and he buys fine clothes, and he goes to fancy restaurants, and he has great conversations. Not often, but once in a while. Then he becomes saturated. He doesn't want to have sex anymore. He doesn't want to be around Kamala anymore. He doesn't like to wear fine clothes anymore. All of a sudden, he goes back to the person he's always been, discontent and unhappy. And then he goes to the city, and he finds himself what he calls child people, grown people like me, but they speak like little children. Their pursuits are what little kids pursue. You take your kid to Target and he wants a $10 toy, a car. As an adult, well, you buy a Benz. It's the same thing. And a car is supposed to just get you from point A to point B, right? But something really interesting happens to him. He says, I had a great father, but that didn't do anything for me. I had a great life, that didn't do anything for me. I went into the monastery, let's just say. I fasted, I prayed. Those didn't do anything for me. I even saw the Buddha. He didn't do anything for me. I saw the most beautiful woman on this planet, Kamala. She didn't do anything for me. I had great food, Thai food, Chinese food, Zachary's pizza. In the end, I find myself disgusted by all of them. And what you have in his form of nihilism is that I've knocked on so many doors, and all those doors opened, and I walked through them. And I was exposed to all the things that those rooms had to offer. And I ate, whether it's physical food, emotional food, intellectual food, spiritual food. I'm disgusted by them all. And that is a good place to be in life. It's very sad because by the time you get there, life no longer has anything to offer you. And it's a devastating place. See someone like Friedrich Nietzsche who comes forth and says God is dead. And he broadcasts this to an audience for whom God has had meaning for all these years, thousands of years. When you say God is dead, when you take your companion to the church and you look to the heavens and you say only death do us part, and death is in the hands of God. So our marriage will be annulled the moment God says, you've lived enough, it's time to come back home. When politics revolves around God, when your human mannerism revolves around God, when God is dead, there is no meaning to life anymore. But here's the problem with Friedrich Nietzsche. He didn't have any relationships. He doesn't know how to walk away from the world, being attached, to love your son, to love your husband, to love your mother. He had zero of them. Friedrich Nietzsche was temperamentally gloomy. He's a great poet. I mean, read Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It'll inspire you. But it's spoken by a man who has no real life experience. You could say he sits back, he looks at the rest of us, and he writes a novel about us, how pathetic we are. But why don't you go live that pathetic life? See the sort of emotions that pathetic life creates. Fall in love. And then walk away. So, and it's something that Plato warned us about. People like Friedrich Nietzsche. He's an artist. But he creates illusions. But they are so wonderful, so beautiful, you'll follow them. But they'll take you nowhere in the end. I don't even know what your question was, Dagan. But I guess it doesn't really matter. Matt?
You speak about how trauma is a experience that can help you grow, but how do you differentiate, beneficial trauma from destructive trauma in the sense that, sometimes when people get heartbreak or they deal with other like traumas of poverty, they end up just, enacting violence on others in reaction.
That is a great question. If I am holding this cup and I walk and accidentally I trip and this cup falls to the ground and shatters into 1,000 pieces, the cup has suffered trauma. It's not fixable. You just have to trash it. Life is something that happens to us accidentally. Two people have sex, here we are. You go to a random party, you look at someone, accidentally, like them. It's instinctual. Then you fall in love with them. You just spend some time with anything, you fall in love. If on the other hand, I didn't like the way this cup feels, looks, what I'll do, I'll go to my garage, I'll take some grinders, then I'll destroy it in a way that I want it to be destroyed. And if I have the skills, I'll put it back together in a way that would make me feel better. And then I'll bring it to class and I'll drink from it. So there are two kinds of traumas. One that is created upon you by someone who has the skills, breaks you down, then protects you because he knows or she knows how difficult it is to be broken down. And that person will be an oasis for you, will create some shade. So once in a while in times of crisis, when you just can't emotionally handle it, you can always call and say, can I just come and sit for a few minutes? And they say, sure. And they know why you're doing it. That's a good trauma to have. Imagine if Socrates was to run into Plato, and there is this instant attraction between these two fellows. And Plato would say, you know what, I'm going to rip the plays I've written for the committee. I'm just going to follow you. And Socrates would say, that's great. Okay. Who doesn't want followers? Who doesn't want relevance and attention? Okay. And so Plato follows him. And all he can think about is Socrates and all the things he talked about. And then the night comes. Socrates looks at Plato and says, see you around. Plato says, where are you going? I'm going home. And then what? Well, I'm leaving the country. What about me? What about you? You destroyed me. You destroyed my life. What am I supposed to believe in? Who am I supposed to follow? I can't go back to writing stupid plays. I can't go back to my parents. I know a bit too much now about love. You have expelled me from my Garden of Eden. You know, you can't pull me to Nebuchadnezzar in the movie The Matrix and then say, you know what, why don't you go back down to the Matrix and have a good time? I know too much now. And if you were to abandon Plato at the age of 18 in Athens, having been exposed to Socrates and his intensity, there is probably a good chance that Plato would have suffered a good amount of depression and maybe have ended his life. But that's not what he did. He protected Plato to the point that when Plato became an adult, he formed a school. And he didn't say, well, it's going to be public education. He interviewed people. Because by the time he became like 30 or 40, he knew the value of time. He knew how hard it took him to understand a few things. He also knew that he witnessed his own teacher being killed by what they call democracy, the majority. And so he broke people, but he also protected them. So the thing you need to understand is life creates poverty. It's accidental. Those who have power create borders. And those who happen to be a bit more unfortunate fall on the side of a border that has no food, no water, no electricity. Okay? And they have a land filled with resources. And so the powerful will always invade, take their goods and go back. That's what life does. Is it traumatic? Yes. Is there something can be done? Maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, we've tried all sorts of things in the past 5,000 years. Nothing so far has worked in making us a bit more civilized, a bit more reflective. The sort of trauma you want to put yourself into is, let's say you go home and you realize you have this passion for piano. Well, that's a part of you that has passion for piano. There are all these other parts of you, what you call personality, where you want to play video games, you want to hang out with your friends, you want to do 1,001 things. Well, this teacher has to deceive you, con you, manipulate you, little by little take your goods away from you. And one day you wake up, you want to call a friend, but then you have no friends. He has taken everything from you. In the course of doing so, the only companion you have is piano. But that's not enough, because all you have is passion with zero skills. Now here comes someone and teaches you. Well, your fingers need to stretch. Eye-hand foot coordination have to be in place. You have lots of work to do ahead of you. To a destination unknown, will you ever be a Beethoven? Who the hell knows? You live in the dark. And every time you make a mistake, the teacher just harasses you, assaults you in all sorts of different ways. And then after 10 years or 20 years, it's usually about maybe 4 to about 7 years or so, the teacher surprises you. You become very proficient now, both in passion and skills you've matured. He comes home or she comes home and turns off the light, removes the music sheet and says, why don't you improvise? You've been copying and pasting for plagiarizing for the past 7 years. You have all this stuff inside you. Let me hear you. And now you improvise, and it's beautiful. And you realize now, after 5 or 6 or 10 years, now you can taste the fruits of your labor. You have lost your friends, yes. You dropped out of school, yes. Your parents rarely see you. You lock yourself in a room and just study music. But the end result is you get a call from Zellerbach Theater. They say, can you come and perform for us? And you do. Johnny Carson, when he had this late night show, I remember, I think it was, what's his name, that guy who used to play piano, he's dead now. But you guys, you don't remember his name? He was very flamboyant. What was it? Liberace, that's right. Yeah. It's a fine little fellow. So he was sick, so he couldn't show up to the show. And Johnny Carson looked at the audience and said, listen, we have 15 minutes that was allotted to Liberace. Liberace, right? Liberace, right? And so because he's not here, is there anyone in this room who knows how to play the piano? And this kid from the audience, way in the back, raises his hand and says, I know how to play. Are you good? I guess so. So he comes and performs for 15 minutes. Beautiful. And a month later, Carson invites him back on the show, this young kid. He has a gig at Las Vegas every weekend. Now, the kid would probably say, well, here, I dropped school, I dropped my wife, I dropped my kids, all for the sake of the piano. Where has it gotten me? Nothing. And all of a sudden, magic happens. So, the issue of finding someone who's proficient enough to break you and put you back together, it's no different than going to a therapist's office, if he or she happens to be very good, is that you've locked yourself up inside in a dungeon somewhere. It's dark, it's gloomy, and every time you go close to it, you can feel the heat, and so it pains you, so you walk the other way. And you walk away with a good amount of blisters. And then, you say, well, I can't continue living the way I have for the past 20 years. Let me just go and sit and see what the hell this guy's talking about. And he opens you up. Little by little, you begin to see things, and it's painful. And then you go home a bit more depressed. At least before, if you don't see, it doesn't exist. If you don't think about your father, for example, if you don't open all these memory files, well, you can just go on with your day, and it's relatively okay. But the moment you begin to like this therapist and you begin to like the narratives and the conversation and you open, and then you become addicted to opening the files and seeing and feeling and crying and being depressed, then there comes a point where you say, you know what? My father was the way he was. I accept him. All the stuff that happened to me, it happened. I accept that. But if he was to open you up and put you in the presence of these vulturous memories, and then you get this news that he's dead, well, what the hell are you going to do with all these files that have now been opened? Now you're a mess. So the point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is trauma is good only if it's been imposed upon you by someone who knows.
Have you seen the movie Whiplash?
I have. Yeah, it's really good. Have you ever seen the movie The Matrix?
Yes.
And I don't know where you can go to find people who are really good at breaking and putting things back together. I've been looking for one for a long time. Anyone else? Terry, yes. Sarah? Wolf? Confidence? You shouldn't. I mean, what the hell have you done? The only thing you can be confident about is breathing and walking. I mean, really, I mean, you know, all this, the problem with Oprah Winfrey and all these bumpers say, love yourself. Oh, I love myself. I have so many students, especially during my summer classes, who sit in the back, and after, it's usually the world religions class, which is really, really good for those of you in this class who may still be alive and in Oakland. Take the religion class. It's 6 to 9 at night. And bring your, you know, friends and kids. They would all say, well, I love myself. And I said, well, how old are you? I'm 18. You look at them, they're ugly, they're smelly, they look bad, everything about them is bad. They can't even speak proper English, but they love themselves. Oh, I love the good and the bad. Really? I started playing Persian music, I don't know, when I was like young. And then when we would go to gatherings, they would ask me to sing. I have a really, really good voice. And then once in a while, we would have professionals come to the house. And then they would say, Amir, can you sing? I had zero confidence in the presence of those people. Me? I'm not going to sing. Are you kidding? No. So I have a stomachache, or my throat hurts, or God just told me I'm going to die. You know? So if you're hanging out with 10 ugly people and you happen to be the prettiest of the uglies, you should have confidence. Because when 10 ugly people walk into a room, well, some guy is going to look at the prettiest ugly person. If on the other hand you happen to be the only ugly and there are 10 attractive people, you have no reason to be confident. In fact, you should be ashamed. You should put something on your face. When you talk about confidence, the truth is, well, do you have any skills? Are you proficient in anything? Can you make good coffee? I mean, that's like genuine, honest confidence. But walking around acting like an idiot, I'm confident and love myself. You're just an idiot. And idiots say those things. They probably borrowed it from Oprah Winfrey. It's all these fucking religious or what's that guy? Timothy Charlotte? Yeah, that kid, punk. So he comes on TV, right? Now, this kid, fine. He's got a nice looking face, if you like sticks. And he's asked some questions. And he says, well, people should live their best lives. Well, you look at this fellow and you say, well, you know, he was born in a cradle made of gold. He's got parents who's powerful. He's been in the movies ever since he was -2 years old. You know, he plays all these movies. He's known, he's famous. Wherever he goes, he gets attention. And here I am, this pathetic little animal, sitting in my room. I look in my fridge, I have nothing. I look in my bank account, I have nothing. I look at my cell phone, I got no friends. And then he gives me a bumper sticker. Live your best life. Well, shit, I got zero power. How the hell do I go about doing that? And these are the heroes and the icons of our society. And no one ever questions them. I have no idea how we got here. Let's move on. So this kid, he's accomplished nothing. You know, biologically, he has some good looks. Life has given him some power accidentally, and he comes and makes the rest of us feel like crap. Why? Because I got to take a boring philosophy class. Anything? Richard? Terry? Well, you need to entertain them. It's a dance that we all have to play. But the question is, do you have enough power to entertain people they like the way you like to entertain them? Look, if I say you're welcome to come to the office, for example, and it's because you asked to come to the office, and I sit there and you're going to talk about your mom and then your dad and then your boyfriend and then your school and this and that. This is not entertaining for me. It may be for you because you found a couple of free ears, and I'll tolerate your presence for about 5-10 minutes, and then I say, "Oh, my mom is calling. Can you please get lost?" I have the power to do that. If, on the other hand, I came with Uber to your house and you were filling my ears with garbage and I got zero money and my intention was to stay the night, I have no choice because I have zero power. I have no choice but to suffer the ridiculous narratives coming my way. Okay? Like Hurricane Kendra. If you have power, you control the narrative. Which means the following. Should you say, I want to come to my office, can I come to your office? I say, is it something about the class, philosophy? Is it about thinking, reflecting? Do you have questions? Because I can see myself in that world. I don't care about your private life. That doesn't interest me. And so you realize, because I know what it is that I enjoy, what sort of games I want to play, benefits me physically, emotionally, intellectually, and if I have a soul, maybe spiritually. Then I will only invite those who can play the game I enjoy. And I assure you, if they play the game I enjoy, they too will enjoy it. Maybe not at that moment, but 5 years from now. I haven't seen Brandon for over, a year, maybe 2 years now. He's playing music. I don't enjoy that game. Even if he was to make it big, it wouldn't be enjoyable. I want to see him in the classroom. But for that, he needs to get a master's degree. That's the game I enjoy. And then when he comes to me and says, I have my master's, then I'll take the trouble to go to my dean and make some contacts. Hopefully, he'll have an open door, he'll start teaching. That's the game I like to play. And I can play it because I have the power. And so the moment you realize what you're good at and what you can or can't do, the number of games you play become very, very small. And the number of people who desire to play those games also begin to shrink. If you come to my office and say, I want to do philosophy, I say, well, that's great. What kind of philosophy? And the moment I realize, well, my class isn't really interesting, I kind of shut down. I don't really care. So have the power to pick and choose the people you want to be around you. And then of those people, see who is willing to play the sort of games you want to play. And I assure you, once you get to be like 60, 70, once your body fails you a little bit, you realize almost all the games you and I have played are just futile and ridiculous and stupid. But nevertheless, while you are young and have your health, pick and choose the sort of games you want to play carefully. And then you can enjoy them. And they won't be the cause of regret and remorse and repentance later on. Terry. Sarah. Maybe. Yeah. So, anyone else before we spike? Megan, Richard, Aaron. Just want to make sure I know all of your names. Yeah. Go ahead.
How can you learn psychology and philosophy?
Oh, you can't. Well, you can. First of all, psychology is no good. It's stupid. What?
Yeah,
What?
that's my major, man.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Class.
What?
That's my next class.
Oh. So, look, let's just say all the brain chemistry and all the stupid things that come with it aside, psychology is about human behavior, right? Well, you can't really teach psychology the right way if you don't understand sociology, because society has a bunch of advertisements that impact the human brain, that create certain brain chemistry, and then human beings are on the move. Okay? You can't understand society without understanding politics. So you have to be a great political scientist. And for the longest time in our history, politics and religion were almost one and the same. So you can't really teach psychology without understanding politics, sociology. But they're all connected to your culture. So you have no choice but to also be a good cultural anthropologist. And the problem with culture is that it contains history. So you have to be a great historian. Why? Because history creates events. Events create meaning. Events create human behavior. And meaning ultimately is the domain of philosophy. So if you want to be a good psychologist, you got to be a theologian, a political scientist, anthropologist, and all the other stuff that I mentioned. Otherwise, you'll just be incomplete. And there'll be many errors in the way you think about things. I had this colleague of mine at a certain school, I won't name it, Folsom Lake College. Oh, did that just slip out? I'm sorry. She was a nice woman, She was married 3 times. One of her kids, unfortunately, ended her life, or his life. I don't know if she's still married, but when I was around her, her husband had told her, if you ever leave me, I will shoot you. And he was sexually abusive, but she loved him. She was the chair of humanities department or philosophy or something. She became a dean later on, and then she became the vice president and the vice chancellor. And I remember I was team teaching with her. Like one day I was walking in the hallway and she was walking this way. I said, so you want to team teach? Why? Just go have fun, man. She says, okay. She knew a thing or two about art. She wasn't a very good speaker, but she would hid behind all the information and knowledge that she had memorized. She didn't want to come out. She was fearful of injecting. We were talking about Renaissance. And for those of you who may not know what Renaissance is, you suffer for 1,000 years, and then there is this breaking point where things explode, and you realize you can't go back to the old ways. And so you begin to examine a whole host of things, whether it needs to be human, God, politics. And for the first time, you realize instead of being so focused on God, maybe you should just change your focus to what it means to be human. She was talking about Renaissance, but there was no passion in it. She just wasn't a good teacher. And she wasn't a good teacher because she wasn't a good psychologist. She wasn't a good sociologist. So there's nothing wrong with psychology as long as you can kind of do those other things as well. So for those of you who are doing psychology, it's no good. Unless you have an instructor who can kind of touch on all those other branches. Let me give you an example. Is that okay, Terry? Karl Marx. He loved Hegel. Hegel was a dreamer. And initially, Karl Marx was very infatuated with Hegel. And then came the big factories, very close to where he was living. And then he is touched by human suffering. Sociology. It impacted him so much that he put Hegel on the cross and buried him. He was never resurrected. He became a political philosopher. But he studied the impact of big cities on the human psyche. He studied what happens when big cities grow to something like Oakland, where you become a stranger to yourself and other people. He talked about depression. He talked about capitalism, what money does to people, and how greed comes about in capitalism, the sort of greed you have in capitalism, how viciousness is directed to capitalism, and how everyone eventually becomes a prostitute in capitalism. Now that is a good political scientist to follow. So anyone else? Yeah.
How would you go about living life if you kind of just went blind the next day?
If you went blind?
Like, just completely. I kind of asked because, I have a chance to have that happen someday due to my illnesses.
I wish I knew. This is going to sound a little weird, and forgive me, I don't have experience about this stuff, but there's a saying in the Persian world, and the Persian world is the Islamic world, it's a religious world, that the saying is, when God closes one door, he opens like 10 others. And I don't know how true this is, that when someone loses a certain ability, a certain gift that was given to them by nature, say the gift of sight, when that is lost, it's replaced by another gift. Whether it's one of those Oprah Winfrey statements, I don't really know. So there, I wish I could tell you that. And I don't want to say enjoy everything that you see out there, because I was on the hospital bed, my chest was open, and you would think that they would appreciate life a bit more, suck the marrow out of every moment, after the triple bypass. But the truth is, I don't have that ability. I'm not that focused. I don't really care that much for life to suck the marrow out of it. It's not that interesting for me. But one of the things I think it's important to note is that human beings are profoundly resilient. Somehow we manage to survive. I don't know how, but we manage. So once, life deals you a tragedy, whether you, whether me, whether anyone in this room, will you be depressed and angry? Yes. Will you demand justice from the gods and other people? Absolutely. Will there come a time, hopefully, that you will accept your losses? Yeah, probably. So, sorry. Matt?
Speak a little bit more about that, about having a near-death experience and what the next step you feel.
I don't think it matters that much. Well, let me rephrase. Some years ago, it was, I think, on 60 Minutes. It's like 1981, 82. They had this show about this man who was the CEO of this company, and he was giving a talk. It was a business environment. He was giving a talk about how to make more money. He had charts everywhere, and he had an audience of maybe, 10, 15, 20 people in his company. And all of a sudden, he went mute. He couldn't talk. And he went to the doctors, but they couldn't find a remedy. And then one day in the kitchen, he just passed out. And after about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, he came back to. And from that point on, he was able to read minds. And he had said that, I quit my job, I sold my business, I bought a tiny little hut, and I do gardening now. And when someone comes to give me something, I feel what they are, I feel who they are, I feel what they're thinking, and I either say come or I say stay away from me. Just leave what you have over there, I'll go pick it up. So there are some experiences that can be life transforming. Okay, you get married because of hopes and all that stuff. The hope gets shattered, and you will get remarried, but you will get remarried with a good amount of doubts and fear. Okay? So the point is, life can give us experiences that can change you inside and out. You're talking about certain experiences that kind of change the platform on which you stand, the very foundation. Like you're a secularist, you love money, you love sex, you have a near-death experience, and you become a saint. There was a guy, Saint Francis of Assisi, rich father, religious mother. He goes to war. He kills a lot of people. He has a vision, an experience of Jesus. He comes back. He falls into coma. He wakes up after a few days and his life is changed. He goes to the dungeon and gives everything his father has saved, all the textiles, throws them down. And his father angrily takes him to the priest, and he says, tell my father that it's not worth losing his soul for all the stuff. And then he takes off his clothes, and he looks at his father and says, you gave me a name, I want to give it back to you, because I don't care for you, and because I don't care for you, I don't care for the name you've given me. Your name is secular, I don't want it. And he says, I want to be called a beggar, I want to be naked. And he creates the Franciscan order. For an experience, any experience, to be housed inside you, first it has to be profoundly intense. And then you have to keep, just in case it's not as intense and there's a tendency of forgetting. I mean, I forget my triple bypass every single day. And I have to will myself to go for a walk for an hour. I have to will myself. And why do I have to will myself? Perhaps because I don't love life that much. Because if I loved it, I would go on a walk every goddamn day, 24/7. If I loved life, I would enjoy every single moment because I know what it means to not be here. The truth is, I don't give a shit. Okay? So you have to be able to care for something intensely, deeply, and meaningfully. At the same time, you must also remember that parts of you gets distracted. You have to come to school, you have to do classes, and that's going to distract you from the experience you had. So in order to protect that experience, take only classes that remind you of the experience. And if you're talking about near-death experiences, you take psychology of, living and dying. I'll be teaching a philosophy of death class in a couple of semesters. Take religion classes that talk about this stuff. And the more exposure you have to these things, the more protected this experience will be. And as this experience blossoms, what happens when you go out on dates, the only thing you want to talk about is, so tell me, Joanne, what are you doing with your life? And just in case she says, I go to cloud rap music. Say, oh, get away from me. And I don't really know if what people say happened to them or the things that they see in near-death experiences are actually true. I'll tell you a story. What time is it before I ramble on for another 18?
Those are
All right. So, Casera, take it easy. So there was this nun. You guys know what a nun is, right? I'm not talking about like the Indian bread. Nun. I'll be sorry. So there is this woman who has visions of Jesus Christ every single night. And she loves it. I mean, who wouldn't love dreaming about Jesus every single day, right? It's like having a spiritual orgasm every single day. It's beautiful. And there comes a point where she has migraine headaches and she wants to, it's painful. It's very distracting. She goes to the doctors and they say, listen, you have a tumor in your brain and we need to get it out. She says, okay, let's do it. It says there's only one problem. Because of neuroscience, now we know a few things about the brain and how it functions, the things we didn't know like 20 years ago, or maybe 100 years ago. And the doctor tells her, this tumor is pushing on the part that has to do with the visual cortex. So there is a chance that if we remove the tumor, that particular spot in your brain will no longer be imposed, and you may lose the visions. What do you think? Now, you have a choice. If you remove no more Jesus, and there's a good chance you may not want to worship Jesus Christ anymore, you may actually just want to have sex all day. Or keep the tumor, keep having the visions, and you'll die in 6 months. Which one do you want? Now, given the fact that she was a very highly religious, spiritual woman, she says, I have faith in God, I trust God, this is not one of those figments of my imagination, it has nothing to do with my brain, it's about my soul, it's about God, get the tumor out. She has the tumor out, the visions are completely gone. She waits, she prays, she fasts, no more visions. She ends her life. What happens to you when there is not enough oxygen going to your brain? Will you see your father because of a certain traumatic experience 20 years ago? Maybe. Will you see Yahweh because your parents are Jew and you've been going to the synagogue ever since you were -2? Maybe. Could, in fact, God exist? I don't really know. I don't have answers to those things. All I know is that we are at a certain age in our intellectual growth that almost everything that you touch, you can be doubtful. Have a really, really nice weekend. It's good to see all of you. So, sorry to have kept you